There is a detail in the gospel accounts that almost every reader passes over without stopping. It is not a miracle. It is not a teaching. It is a single act that happened before every miracle, so consistently that it cannot be coincidence. Before the bread multiplied, Jesus gave thanks. Before Lazarus walked out of the tomb, Jesus lifted his eyes and gave thanks. Before the healing, before the restoration, before the impossible became visible, Jesus thanked the Father as if it had already happened. This was not performance. This was not religious habit. This was a precise activation of an ancient Aramaic principle that the translators could never fully capture in English. The Aramaic is not merely a language, it is a sacred vibration. To ensure that you capture every nuance of the frequency that Jesus used, I have prepared a visual pronunciation guide that will appear on your screen. Observe the symbols and the phonetics as we hear the sound, so that your intention is in perfect harmony with the word. The word is Tawdi, and it carries a dimension of meaning so layered, so alive, that understanding it will permanently change the way you approach every unanswered prayer, every delayed promise, every miracle you are still waiting for. Stay until the very end of this video, because I will give you something that few have ever received: the complete protocol of transformation, the exact practice that Jesus modeled, translated from the original Aramaic into a living daily activation you can begin today. To understand what Jesus was doing when he gave thanks before the miracle, you have to first understand what the Aramaic world understood about the nature of time. In the Greek-influenced framework that shaped most Western theology, time moves in one direction. Past is past, future is future, and the present is simply the narrow border between what was and what has not yet arrived. But in the Aramaic tradition, in the living language that Jesus spoke, prayed in, and taught from, time was understood very differently. The Aramaic language carries within its verb structures something that has no clean equivalent in English: the capacity to speak of a future event in the completed tense, as though it has already fully occurred. This is not metaphor. It is grammar. It is baked into the architecture of the language itself. When Jesus stood before the tomb of Lazarus in the Gospel of John, chapter 11, and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me," he was not speaking in optimism. He was not practicing positive thinking. He was speaking in the Aramaic mode of completed reality, declaring in the present moment the absolute certainty of what the divine had already set in motion in the unseen realm. The word at the center of this practice is Tawdi, the Aramaic root for giving thanks, for acknowledging the gift as already received. Tawdi is not gratitude as an emotional response to something you have already seen. It is gratitude as a declaration of what exists in the spiritual dimension before it materializes in the physical one. This is the ancient law that Jesus was not inventing. He was demonstrating it repeatedly, publicly, with perfect consistency, because he wanted those who watched him to understand that this is how the divine economy actually works. The miracle does not produce the gratitude. Gratitude opens the channel through which the miracle flows. When Jesus lifted his eyes and gave thanks with complete certainty before anything visible had changed, he was performing an act of supreme spiritual precision. He was aligning his human awareness with the frequency of the divine realm, where the outcome was already complete, and collapsing the distance between that realm and the present moment. The word Tawdi is the key. And you're about to understand not only what it means, but how to use it with the same intentionality that Jesus brought to it every single time. The miracle of the loaves and fishes is one of the most well-known events in all of Scripture. But what almost no teacher pauses on is the precise sequence of what Jesus did. He did not look at the crowd and assess what was lacking. He did not calculate the deficit between 5 loaves, 2 fish, and 5,000 people, and then ask the Father to make up the difference. He took the bread, he looked upward, and he gave thanks. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 14, this moment is described with a word that connects directly to the Aramaic root, Tawdi, the act of blessing, acknowledging, declaring the gift is already complete. Only then did he begin to break the bread. Only then did the multiplication occur. This sequence is everything, because what Jesus was demonstrating is that the act of anticipated gratitude was not the end of the process. It was the beginning. The Aramaic spiritual tradition understood something that modern manifestation frameworks have only partially grasped. The human soul operates as a receiver of divine frequency. And like any receiver, its capacity to receive is determined by the quality of its attunement. A soul contracted in fear, in doubt, in the anxiety of what has not yet arrived, that soul has narrowed its channel. It can receive only what its contracted state allows. But a soul that chooses Tawdi, that chooses to declare, before the evidence appears that the divine has already heard, already answered, already set the provision in motion, that soul has expanded its channel to its full capacity. It has matched its own frequency to the frequency of the answer. This is why Jesus gave thanks before the miracle. He was not informing the Father of anything. He was tuning himself. He was performing the inner act of alignment that opened the full flow of what the divine intended to give. The word Tawdi is the tuning fork. When spoken with full intention, when held in the body as a lived declaration rather than a religious phrase, it changes the internal state of the person speaking it. And that changed internal state is precisely what the miracle was waiting for. The words of Jesus in Aramaic open different pathways back to divine alignment. Each one represents a frequency capable of restoring something fragmented in human consciousness. Understanding these frequencies is the first step. But mastering their vibration in your daily life is where the true miracle happens. Aramaic words carry a sound dimension that is deeply vibrational, and some of these pronunciations may reach your ears slightly differently depending on how they are rendered. To help you embody each frequency with precision, I created a collection of 5 sacred study guides, each one dedicated to a specific Aramaic declaration and its practice. Inside, you'll find the correct pronunciation, guided meditations, and daily activation rituals. The link is pinned in the comments. Your deeper transformation begins there. There is a second Aramaic word that is essential to understanding the depth of what Jesus was practicing, and it is the word that explains why anticipated gratitude is not wishful thinking. That word is shubqalan, a term rooted in the Aramaic concept of release, of letting go, of allowing the divine flow to move without obstruction. Shubqalan appears in the Lord's Prayer in a context that English translations have rendered as forgiveness, but the Aramaic meaning is far richer than that single word can contain. In its fullest sense, shubqalan is the act of releasing your grip on the outcome. It is the internal movement that says, I have declared this. I have given thanks as though it is already so, and now I release my anxious hold on when and how it arrives. This is the part of the practice that most people skip. They can intellectually perform gratitude, can say the words of Tawdi, but then, in the silence that follows, they reach back in with worry. They check whether the miracle is on its way. They measure the current reality against the declaration they just made, and in that measuring, they contract again. Jesus modeled something different. After giving thanks, he moved. He broke the bread. He called Lazarus out. He did not stand between the declaration and the outcome, watching anxiously for confirmation. He released, trusted shubqalan, the open-handed posture of a soul that has given its full declaration to the divine, and then stepped back to allow the completion. This pairing is the heart of the ancient law that Jesus demonstrated. Tawdi opens the channel, and shubqalan keeps it open. Gratitude without release collapses into performance. But gratitude held in an open hand, declared fully and then surrendered, creates the conditions in which the impossible becomes not only possible, but inevitable. The soul that has mastered this pairing does not live in the anxiety of unanswered prayer. It lives in what the Aramaic teachers called the peace that surpasses understanding, a state not of passive waiting, but of active, expectant, already received knowing. If something in you is shifting as you receive this teaching, trust that movement. It is your original nature recognizing itself. The 5 sacred study guides were designed to walk beside you as that remembrance deepens, layer by layer, word by word, frequency by frequency. Each guide carries the full context of these sacred declarations, their sound, their meaning, and their power to dissolve what no longer belongs to you. The link is pinned in the comments. Your return to wholeness has a next step. Every teaching of Jesus was rooted in an understanding of the human being as something far more sophisticated than a physical creature sending requests to an external deity. In the Aramaic framework that he inhabited, the human soul was understood as a tuned instrument, capable of resonating with specific divine frequencies when properly calibrated, and capable of broadcasting those frequencies outward into the field of creation. This is why the words that Jesus chose were never casual. Every Aramaic declaration he made was selected for its vibrational precision, for its capacity to interact with both the inner state of the speaker and the outer fabric of reality simultaneously. The third word central to this teaching is schlama, the Aramaic root of what is translated in English as peace, but which carries a meaning vast enough to encompass wholeness, completion, the state of nothing missing and nothing broken. Schlama is the state that Jesus was always operating from, and it is the state that makes anticipated gratitude not just possible, but natural. A soul at peace does not give thanks as a technique. It gives thanks as an honest report of its inner reality. I am whole. I am held. What I need is already in motion because I am already in the frequency of its completion. This is the inner condition that preceded every miracle Jesus performed. Not confidence as a performance. Not faith manufactured through repetition. But schlama, a genuine, inhabited wholeness that had no room for the anxiety of lack. When Jesus stood at the tomb of Lazarus and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me," he was speaking from schlama, from a place in which the outcome was not hoped for but known, not as arrogance, but as intimate attunement with the divine will. The ancient law of anticipated gratitude is not a formula you apply to a situation. It is a state you return to, a frequency you inhabit, from which the declaration of Tawdi arises, not as effort, but as the most natural and honest expression of what is already true in the spiritual realm. And the miracle, when it arrives, is not a surprise to the soul that has learned to live in schlama. It is simply the physical world catching up with what the soul already knew. The question that always arises when this teaching is presented is a fair one. If anticipated gratitude is a spiritual law, why do so many sincere people practice it without seeing the results they are expecting? The answer is found in a fourth Aramaic word, one that Jesus returned to again and again in his most intimate teachings. That word is a bwoon, typically translated as Father in the Lord's Prayer, but which carries in the original Aramaic a meaning far more precise and far more intimate than any patriarchal title can suggest. Abwun is a combination of the root word for divine parent and the ancient Aramaic particle that denotes a breath, an outpouring, a creative force that emanates and generates continuously. Oin is not a being you petition from a distance. Abwun is the source that breathes you, the originating frequency from which your own existence is a continuous outpouring. When Jesus addressed Abwun before performing a miracle, he was not reaching upward towards something external. He was aligning inward with something that was the source of his own existence. He was returning, consciously and deliberately, to the originating breath from which he and everything around him continually emerged. This is why anticipated gratitude in the Abwun framework is not about convincing a distant God to change his mind. It is about returning to the source, recognizing that the provision, the healing, the miracle was never withheld by the divine, but was always available at the frequency of complete alignment. When sincere practitioners fail to experience the results of their gratitude practice, the missing element is almost always this. They're performing Tawdi from a soul still contracted in separation, still speaking to Abwun as though he were far away, reluctant, or waiting to be convinced. The practice that Jesus modeled was not effortful persuasion. It was the effortless return of a soul to its source, a return so complete that the separation between the asker and the answer dissolved entirely. And in that dissolution, the miracle was not received from outside. It arose from within. This is the ancient law in its fullest form. Return to Abwun, declare Tawdi, release through shubqalan, rest in schlama. The miracle is the natural expression of a soul that has found its way back home. Everything in this teaching resolves into a single, living truth. The miracle was never the point. The miracle was the evidence, the visible confirmation of an inner alignment that Jesus carried so completely, so consistently, that the physical world had no option but to reflect it. Tawdi was the declaration. Shubqalan was the release. Schlama was the ground, and Abwun was the source. Together, these four Aramaic frequencies formed the spiritual architecture through which Jesus operated, and through which he invited every soul who encountered him to begin operating as well. You are not being invited to imitate Jesus from the outside in. You are being invited to remember, from the inside out, that the same Abwun who breathed him is breathing you, that the same divine source that responded to his Tawdi is already listening to yours, and that the only thing that has ever separated you from the miracle you are waiting for is the frequency from which you have been asking for it. Did you feel something shift today? Did these words touch something deeper in you? If they did, leave the word frequency activated in the comments. That is your confirmation that the light within you is moving. And when the light moves, it needs a path. Discover our complete collection of 5 sacred study guides created to carry your transformation beyond this moment. The link is pinned in the comments. Your next step is waiting. We are just scratching the surface of this ancient power. Get ready, because in our next video, I will reveal even deeper Aramaic codes that unlock spiritual authority you've never imagined. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss this unfolding revelation. Protocol of transformation based directly on the teachings of Jesus, practical and spiritual. You have received the teaching. Now, here's the practice. The 4 Aramaic frequencies of this teaching are Tawdi, shubqalan, schlama, and Abwun. Each one is a precise vibrational key. Together, they form the complete protocol of anticipated gratitude, the exact inner movement that Jesus demonstrated before every miracle recorded in the Gospels. Abwun, Abwun, the Ab, is open and breathy, like a deep exhale. The wun resolves softly, as though the word itself is being exhaled into existence. Tawdi, thd, the T is gentle, not sharp. The ah is open and sustained. The final syllable D is light and clear, almost like a release of breath. Shubqalan, the sh is soft. The middle syllable carries the weight. The final and dissolves gently, as though releasing into open space. Schlama, both syllables carry equal weight. The final ma lands with a sense of completeness and arrival. To practice how to activate anticipated gratitude, choose a moment of quiet, ideally in the first minutes of your morning. Before the mind has filled with the day's demands, sit comfortably. Place both hands open on your knees, palms facing upward. Begin with 3 slow, deliberate breaths. On each exhale, allow the word Abwun to move through you, not loudly, but as a whisper, a recognition. I am breathing. And the breath is the source. I am not separated from what I need. I am already inside the frequency of the one who gives. On your 4th breath, bring to mind with specificity and clarity the situation you are carrying, the unanswered prayer, the provision that has not yet arrived, the healing you are waiting for. Hold it without contraction, simply see it. Then speak aloud, Tawdi. And as you speak it, choose deliberately, as an act of spiritual will, to feel what it would feel like if the answer had already arrived, not to pretend, not to manufacture emotion, but to remember from the Aramaic framework that in the divine realm, it already has. Stay in that feeling for a full minute. Breathe it. Let it move from your chest outward. Then open your hands wider, and on a long exhale, release through shubqalan. Let the outcome go. Not in defeat and trust. The declaration has been made. The channel is open. The rest is already in motion. Close by, returning to schlama wholeness, completion, nothing missing. Speak this word as the final seal. I am whole. What was spoken is already so. Do this practice for 7 consecutive mornings, not to earn the miracle, but to become the frequency through which the miracle has a place to arrive. Do this practice for 7 consecutive mornings, not to earn the miracle, but to become the frequency through which the miracle has a place to arrive. This is what Jesus demonstrated. This is the ancient law of anticipated gratitude, and it was always yours to live. Right now, before you close this video, come to the comments and tell us, what did you feel? What shifted? We read every single response. If this teaching found you today, subscribe to this channel. Every week we go deeper into the ancient frequency codes that were always meant to be yours.